Do you think one day we'll build an AI system that a person can fall in love with and it would love them back? Like in the movie Her, for example.
Oh, yeah. Although she kind of didn't fall in love with him, or she fell in love with like a million other people, something like that.
You're the
So,
jealous type. I see.
so
We humans are the jealous type.
yes. So I do believe that we can design systems where people would fall in love with their robot, with their AI partner. That I do believe, because it's actually, and I don't like to use the word manipulate, but as we see, there are certain individuals that can be manipulated if you understand the cognitive science about it, right?
Right. So, I mean, if you could think of all close relationship and love in general as a kind of mutual manipulation, that dance, the human dance. I mean, manipulation is a negative connotation.
And that's why I don't like to use that
Yeah.
word particularly.
I guess another way to phrase it is you're getting at is it could be algorithmatized or something. It could be,
The relationship building part can
yeah,
be.
yeah.
I mean, just think about it. There we have, and I don't use dating sites, but from what I heard, there are some individuals that have been dating that have never saw each other, right? In fact, there's a show I think that tries to like weed out fake people. Like there's a show that comes out, right?
Yeah.
Because like people start faking. Like, what's the difference of that person on the other end being an AI agent, right?
Mhm.
And having a communication and you building a relationship remotely, like there's no reason why that can't happen.
In terms of human robot interaction, so what role you've kind of mentioned with data, emotion being can be problematic if not implemented well, I suppose. What role does emotion and some other human like things, the imperfect things, come into play here for good human robot interaction and something like love?
Yeah, so in this case, and you had asked, can a AI agent love a human back? I think they can emulate love back, right? And so, what does that actually mean? It just means that if you think about their programming, they might put the other person's needs in front of theirs in certain situations, right? Think about it as return on investment. Like, what's my return on investment? As part of that equation, that person's happiness, has some type of, algorithm weighting to it. And the reason why is because I care about them, right? That's the only reason, right? But if I care about them and I show that, then my final objective function is length of time of the engagement, right? So you can think of how to do this actually quite easily. And so,
But that's not love.
well, so that's the thing. I think it emulates love because we don't have a classical definition of love.
Right. But and we don't have the ability to look into each other's minds to see the algorithm. And I mean, I guess what I'm getting at is it possible that, especially if that's learned, especially if there's some mystery and black box nature to the system, how is that, you know,
How is it any different?
how is it any different? And in terms of sort of if the system says, I'm conscious, I'm afraid of death, and it does indicate that it loves you. Another way to sort of phrase it, I'd be curious to see what you think. Do you think there'll be a time when robots should have rights? You've kind of phrased the robot in a very roboticist way, and it's just a really good way, but saying, okay, well, there's an objective function, and I could see how you can create a compelling human robot interaction experience that makes you believe that the robot cares for your needs and even something like loves you. But what if the robot says, please don't turn me off? What if the robot starts making you feel like there's an entity, a being, a soul there, right? Do you think there'll be a future? Hopefully, you won't laugh too much at this, but where they do ask for rights.
So I can see a future if we don't address it in the near term, where these agents, as they adapt and learn, could say, hey, this should be something that's fundamental. Hopefully think that we would address it before it gets to that point.
You think so that you think that's a bad future? Is like what is that a negative thing where they ask we're being discriminated against?
I guess it depends on what role have they attained at that point, right? And so if I think about now,
Careful what you say, because the robots 50 years from now will be listening to this, and you'll be on TV saying, this is what roboticists used to believe.
well, right? And so this is and as I said, I have a biased lens,
Right.
and my robot friends will understand that.
Yes.
Um, but so if you think about it, and I actually put this in kind of as a roboticist, you don't necessarily think of robots as human with human rights, but you could think of them either in the category of property, or you can think of them in the category of animals, right? And so both of those have different types of rights. So animals have their own rights as a living being, but they can't vote, they can't, right? They can be euthanized, but as humans, if we abuse them, we go to jail. Like, right? So they do have some rights that protect them, but don't give them the rights of like citizenship. And then if you think about property, the rights are associated with the person, right? So if someone vandalizes your property or steals your property, like there are some rights, but it's associated with the person who owns that. If you think about it, back in the day, and if you remember, we talked about, how society has changed, women were property, right? They were not thought of as having rights. They were thought of as property of, like, their...
Yeah, assaulting a woman meant assaulting the property of somebody else's possession.
Exactly. And so what I envision is that we will establish some type of norm at some point, but that it might evolve, right? Like if you look at women's rights now, like there are still some countries that don't have, and the rest of the world is like, why? That makes no sense, right? And so I do see a world where we do establish some type of grounding. It might be based on property rights, it might be based on animal rights. And if it evolves that way, I think we will have this conversation at that time, because that's the way our society traditionally has evolved.